The great hall of Velthar Palace was silent when Daniel entered. Golden light from hovering crystals cast long shadows across the marble floor. Alien guards stood like statues, their armor reflecting the glow of distant stars. At the far end of the hall sat Emperor Zorath of Velthar, the ruler of 20 worlds and a being feared across the galaxy. Daniel stopped before the throne, keeping his eyes low. He was the only human in that room. The Emperor's eyes, cold and violet, studied him for a long moment. Then his deep voice filled the hall. "Human," he said, "you have been brought here because you teach something dangerous." Daniel stayed calm. "I teach understanding, Majesty. Knowledge brings peace." The Emperor laughed, a hard, echoing sound. "Peace? My daughters have learned your peace. They refuse to fight. They question my rule. They speak of mercy. Mercy makes rulers weak." Daniel's heart sank. He understood now. This was not a teaching offer. It was a test, maybe even a trap. The Emperor stood and stepped down from the throne. He was tall, covered in a long silver robe that shimmered like liquid metal. "You will re-educate them," he said. "You will make them proper daughters of Velthar again. Obedient, ruthless, loyal." Daniel wanted to speak but stopped himself. Every word mattered here. "If I fail?" he asked quietly. "Then you will not live to fail twice," the Emperor said. His hand waved and 3 figures entered through the side doors. The princesses, the eldest, Zorath, had sharp eyes and a proud posture. Her armor gleamed like obsidian, and she moved with the confidence of a soldier. The middle daughter, Lyra, wore a dark violet gown and carried a datapad. Her mind was sharper than her blade. The youngest, Alira, looked different. Her gaze was softer, curious. She seemed too gentle for this palace of iron. Daniel bowed slightly. The 3 sisters watched him like he was a puzzle. The Emperor turned toward them. "You will stay with this human until I am satisfied that your minds are cleansed. Learn discipline again. Learn to rule without weakness." The eldest nodded coldly. The others stayed silent. That night Daniel was taken to the royal learning chambers. The walls glowed faintly blue, lined with books, screens, and alien artifacts. He had once dreamed of teaching across species, of bridging worlds with knowledge. Now he wondered if this was the end of that dream. When the door closed behind him, he heard a soft voice. "You are the human teacher," said Alira, the youngest. She stood near the window, looking at the stars beyond the palace dome. "Father says you can change minds. Can you change hearts too?" Daniel turned toward her, surprised by the question. "He asked me to make you strong," he said gently. "But strength comes in many forms." She smiled faintly, though her eyes were sad. "Here, strength means not feeling at all." Before he could answer, Zorath entered the room. "Do not waste time with human games," she said. "We are not here to be your students. You are here to survive." Daniel looked at her. "Then I will survive by teaching you truth." Zorath gave a small, cruel smile. "Truth is what the Emperor says it is." For days, Daniel tried to teach them lessons about human history, compassion, art, and freedom. The younger 2 listened, though they tried to hide it. The eldest mocked him at first, but her questions grew deeper each time. He told them about the fall of Earth, about how humanity learned to rise again, not through power, but through unity. "Why help others if they cannot help you?" Lyra asked one night. "Because one day," Daniel said, "you might be the one who needs help." That answer stayed with her. He could see it in her eyes, even as she pretended not to care. Then one evening, the Emperor visited unexpectedly. The air froze. He entered the chamber with guards behind him. His gaze moved over his daughters, then to Daniel. "Report." Daniel stood straight. "They learn quickly, Majesty. They have strong hearts." "Strong hearts," the Emperor repeated slowly. "Or weak ones." He turned toward Alira. "You, tell me what you have learned." Alira hesitated. Then softly she said, "That there is strength in kindness." The Emperor's hand tightened around his staff. "Kindness?" he said sharply. "You shame me." He turned away, furious, and the guards followed. The heavy doors slammed shut. Silence filled the room again. The 3 sisters looked at Daniel. For the first time, he saw fear in their eyes. Later, when the night deepened and the city outside the palace slept, Alira approached Daniel again. Her voice trembled. "You should run," she whispered. "Father will not forgive this. He will think you poisoned our minds." Daniel shook his head. "I will not leave my students." Tears glimmered in her eyes. "Then he will destroy you." Daniel looked at the stars beyond the window. Maybe, he said softly, but not before I teach you something real. Outside, thunder rolled through the alien sky. Inside in that silent chamber, the first spark of rebellion was born. Not of hatred, but of love. It was the beginning of something the Emperor could never control. Morning light filtered through the tall glass walls of the learning chamber. The alien city beyond shimmered like a sea of crystal towers, but inside the palace the air felt heavy and cold. Daniel stood before a large holographic board showing a human village, green fields and smiling faces. The three princesses sat across from him in silence. Sarath leaned back, arms crossed, her dark eyes sharp. Lyra pretended to study her datapad, but Daniel could tell she was listening. Elira, the youngest, watched him closely as if trying to read his thoughts. He spoke calmly. On Earth, we once believed power meant control. But real strength was something else. It was care, unity, love, Sarath laughed. Love does not win wars. No, Daniel said, but it ends them. Her eyes narrowed. You speak like a fool, human. Empires fall because of weak hearts. Daniel smiled faintly. Empires fall when hearts turn to stone. The room went silent again. Even Lyra stopped pretending not to listen. Elira leaned forward slightly, her curiosity stronger than her fear. Days passed. The lessons grew bolder. Daniel taught them music, something no Veltharian had heard before. He played an old Earth melody on a small recorder he carried from his childhood. The sound was soft, haunting, full of emotion. When it ended, no one spoke. Lyra finally broke the silence. Why does it make me feel sad? Because you remember something you never knew, Daniel said. That's what music does. It reminds you you're alive. Sarath turned away, pretending to be unmoved, but her fingers tightened around her chair. Elira smiled quietly, eyes glimmering. That night, Daniel found a small piece of folded cloth left outside his quarters. When he opened it, he saw a hand-drawn symbol, the human sign for peace. The ink was uneven, the lines shaky, but the message was clear. Someone had tried to copy it from his lessons. The next day, the Emperor's advisor entered the chamber unannounced. His armor gleamed red, the color of authority. Your progress is being watched, he said. His Majesty expects results. His eyes drifted over the princesses. No more human nonsense. You are Velthar. Sarath bowed slightly. Yes, advisor. But when he left, her jaw tightened. Later that evening, she confronted Daniel in private. You are going to get us all killed, she said. Then why haven't you reported me? He asked. She didn't answer immediately. Her voice softened just enough to betray her doubt. Because you speak of things I cannot unhear. Daniel looked at her. You are not your father's shadow, Sarath. You can be more. Her eyes flickered with conflict. You know nothing of me? Then show me, Daniel said simply. The next day, Sarath arrived early. She sparred with training drones while Daniel prepared his lessons. Her movements were sharp, precise, yet something had changed. Her strikes were slower, her focus broken. She was thinking, not following orders. During lunch, Lyra asked Daniel to explain the human concept of freedom. He drew a circle on the floor. This is a cage, he said. Now imagine the door is open, but you are too afraid to walk out. Freedom is not the open door. It's the courage to step through it, Elira whispered. Would you walk through it even if danger waits outside? Daniel looked at her. Every time. Her eyes filled with quiet wonder. That night, the palace lights dimmed as rain began to fall outside, soft silver droplets against the glass. Elira stayed behind after the lesson. She approached Daniel holding something in her hand, a small silver pendant shaped like a star. My mother gave this to me, she said. She told me it was from before the wars, when Velthar was still kind. I want you to have it. Daniel shook his head. It's precious. Keep it, she smiled faintly. Then it stays with both of us in memory. When she left, Daniel stood by the window watching the storm. He could feel something changing in the air, a shift in their hearts. The Emperor's daughters were beginning to feel again, to question the life they were born into. But deep down, Daniel knew the walls had eyes. Every smile, every question, every forbidden word was being watched. Somewhere in the shadows, the Emperor's spies whispered about the human teacher corrupting royal blood. As the rain turned into thunder, Daniel closed his eyes. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing. The lesson had already begun to reach beyond the classroom. The daughters of Velthar were no longer just students. They were becoming something their father feared most, human at heart. Night settled over the Velthar palace like a blanket of silver clouds. The city below glowed with cold blue lights, but inside the royal chambers only a single lamp burned. Daniel sat by the window, watching lightning crawl across the horizon. He knew eyes were watching him, guards, advisors, maybe even the Emperor himself. Still, he continued teaching, because for the first time his students were starting to feel. Elira entered quietly. Her steps were light, her robe glowing faintly in the dim light. She held the small star pendant Daniel had once refused to take. She closed the door behind her and spoke softly. "Everyone sleeps," she said. "I wanted to ask something." "About Earth." Daniel looked up. "What do you want to know?" "Why did your people fight so much if they believed in love?" she asked. Her eyes were sincere, full of questions she had never been allowed to ask. Daniel smiled sadly. "Because believing in love doesn't mean you always live by it. We made mistakes, but we tried to learn. That's what made us human." Elira sat across from him. The rain tapped gently on the glass, and for a moment the great empire outside felt far away. She asked, "And now? What keeps humans alive?" Daniel took a deep breath. "Hope," he said, "and the will to start again, even when everything is lost." She lowered her gaze, holding the pendant tightly. "Then maybe that's what I want to learn." Before Daniel could answer, the door slid open. Sarath stood there, her face cold but her voice controlled. "The guards are suspicious. If they find her here, they'll accuse you both of treason." Elira turned to her sister. "Do you think I care? He's the only one who speaks truth." Sarath stepped inside and closed the door. "Truth gets people killed," she said quietly. "Especially in this palace," Daniel stood. "Then maybe it's time someone risked it." Sarath stared at him, torn between duty and doubt. "You don't understand our world. We were raised to obey, to rule without feeling. To love anything is weakness." "Then unlearn it," Daniel said softly. "That's the first lesson." Lyra entered next, drawn by curiosity. "If we are already breaking the rules, we might as well all break them together," she said. There was a flicker of a smile on her lips. They gathered around Daniel as he opened a holographic projection of ancient earth paintings. Images of families, children, lovers, soldiers helping each other in war. The princesses had never seen anything like it. "This," Daniel said, pointing to the images, "is what made us strong. Not our weapons, not our walls, our hearts." Lyra frowned. "Your kind lost their world," Daniel nodded. "Yes, but we didn't lose what made us human." Silence filled the room. Elira reached out, touching the glowing image of a mother holding her child. Her voice was barely a whisper. "We were never allowed to touch anyone unless ordered to." "Do humans touch when they care?" Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, it means connection. It means you are not alone." Elira looked at her sisters. Then slowly she placed her hand over Daniel's. Her skin was warm, trembling. For a second the world stopped. A loud sound broke the moment. The door sliding open again, this time not by choice. 2 Imperial guards entered, armor clanging against the marble floor. Their eyes locked on the human, and the princesses joined hands. "Step away," one shouted. Daniel moved back quickly, raising his hands. Sarath stood in front of her sisters. "You will not harm him," she said firmly. The guards hesitated. "Orders are from the Emperor himself. No human touches royal blood." Lyra's voice cut through the tension. "Then tell our father his daughters touched humanity, and it did not break us." The guards exchanged uneasy glances, unsure what to do. Finally they backed away. "You will be summoned by morning," one muttered before leaving. The door closed again, sealing their fate. Elira looked at Daniel, her eyes wide with fear. "He will kill you for this," Daniel sighed. "Maybe. But if he does, he'll know he failed to erase what he feared most." "What's that?" Lyra asked quietly. "The human heart," Daniel said. The storm outside grew louder, lightning flashing through the sky. The sisters stood together, side by side, no longer divided by fear or obedience. For the first time in their lives, they had chosen something for themselves, not power, not perfection, but truth. And in that forbidden moment, 3 royal daughters of a galactic empire took their first step toward rebellion. The morning sky over Velthar burned red with lightning as alarms echoed through the palace halls. Daniel woke to the sound of heavy footsteps and the hum of energy weapons charging. His door burst open and Lyra rushed in, her face pale but her eyes full of fire. "They know," she said breathlessly. Father found out everything. The guards are coming for you. Daniel stood, his heart pounding. Then we have to go now. Behind her, Sarath entered wearing a dark cloak, her armor hidden beneath it. You won't make it far on your own, she said firmly. The Emperor sealed the gates. No one leaves the palace alive without his order. Elira appeared next, clutching a small satchel. We can use the maintenance tunnels under the old library. I mapped them last night. Daniel looked at her in shock. You planned this? She nodded, her voice steady. You told us freedom begins with courage. This is ours. They moved quickly through the silent corridors. The palace, once a place of endless ceremony and power, now felt like a prison ready to explode. Every corner could hide a spy, every shadow a soldier. The faint sound of boots echoed behind them as patrols searched room by room. When they reached the library, Lyra used her datapad to override the security seal. The heavy metal door slid open with a hiss, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling down into darkness. Daniel hesitated for a moment, looking back at the grand hall they were leaving behind. Once we go down, there's no turning back, he said quietly. Sarath looked him in the eye. There was never any turning back the moment we started listening to you. They descended into the tunnels. The air was damp and cold, filled with the hum of old machinery. Pipes ran along the walls and the floor trembled faintly with the power of the city above. Lyra led the way with her datapad glowing faint blue, guiding them through the maze. Suddenly a voice came through the tunnel speakers. The Emperor's voice, calm, deep, and full of quiet rage. My daughters, it said, echoing around them. You have shamed your bloodline. The human has infected you with weakness. Return now and I may still forgive you. Elira stopped walking, her body shaking. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. Keep moving, he whispered. The Emperor's voice grew colder. If you run, you will be hunted across every world under my rule. Do you understand what that means? Lyra didn't stop walking. It means he's afraid, she said. He never speaks when he's calm. He only threatens when he's losing control. Sarath smiled faintly. Then maybe we're winning. They reached the tunnel exit, a rusted hatch that led to the outer hangar. Beyond it, Daniel could hear the wind howling through open space vents. Lyra hacked the control panel, sparks flying. The door creaked open, revealing the vast hangar bathed in red emergency light. Rows of small ships rested under the metal arches. Soldiers were scattered across the far side, securing exits. The air smelled of smoke and ozone. Elira pointed to a small silver craft near the corner. That one's old but still works. We can fly it manually. They ran. The moment they stepped into the open, an alarm blared. Energy bolts cut through the air, sizzling past them. Daniel pushed Elira behind a crate and fired back using a guard's dropped weapon. Sarath drew her blade, deflecting bolts with fast, fierce precision. Lyra ducked behind the control panel, overriding the hangar lockdown. 5 seconds, she shouted. Hold them for 5 seconds. Daniel's heart raced. Sparks lit the air like fireworks as energy blasts tore through the metal walls. Elira crouched low, clutching her pendant, whispering something under her breath. A prayer or maybe just courage. Lyra slammed her hand on the console. Now. The hangar door opened, revealing the black void of space. They sprinted toward the ship, bullets of light chasing them. Daniel jumped into the pilot seat while the sisters secured the back. Strap in, he shouted. The engines roared to life, shaking the floor beneath them. Guards rushed forward, but Sarath hit the controls, sending a blast of exhaust flames across the floor. The ship lifted, broke through the energy shield, and shot into the storming sky. Inside, the alarms faded. Silence returned, broken only by the hum of the ship and their heavy breathing. Stars filled the windows like endless diamonds. Elira leaned against the wall, tears glimmering in her eyes. We did it, she whispered. Daniel looked at her, then at the stars. No, he said softly. We just began. Below them, the Emperor stood on his balcony watching the streak of light vanish into the horizon. His jaw tightened as he turned to his advisors. Send the fleet, he said coldly. Bring my daughters back, and kill the human. But somewhere deep inside, even he knew, he had already lost them. The daughters of Velthar were free, and the fire of rebellion had just been born. The ship drifted through the stars for days, its engines running low and its passengers silent. Beyond the glass of the cockpit, the galaxy stretched like an endless ocean of light and shadow. Daniel sat at the controls, his eyes heavy but alert. The sisters rested in the back, their fine clothes torn, their crowns left behind on the cold floor of their father's palace. They had escaped, but nowhere was safe. The Emperor's reach spread across 20 worlds. If he wanted them found, he would find them. Lyra broke the silence first. "Fuel's almost gone," she said softly. "We need to land soon." Sarath checked the radar. "There's a moon ahead, uncharted, no signals. No cities." Daniel looked at the dim sphere on the screen, a quiet place untouched by war. "Then that's where we go," he said. The ship entered the moon's thin atmosphere and touched down in a valley filled with strange blue grass that shimmered under the pale sun. The air was cool and clean. For the first time since the palace, they could breathe without fear. Illyra stepped out first, her feet sinking slightly into the soft ground. She closed her eyes, feeling the wind on her skin. "It's quiet," she said. "Too quiet," Daniel smiled faintly. "Quiet is good. It means we're alive." They built a small shelter using what little technology remained on the ship. Sarath hunted for food with the precision of a trained warrior, while Lyra learned to harvest the glowing fruit from the tall crystal trees. Daniel showed them how to build fires the old human way, with friction and patience. Illyra sat beside him as the flames flickered. "I never thought warmth could feel alive," she said. Daniel nodded. "Fire is life. It reminds us that even in the dark we can make light." Days turned into weeks. The sisters began to change. Their voices softened, their laughter returned, and for the first time they lived not as princesses but as people. Sarath, once proud and cold, now trained to protect, not to conquer. She taught Daniel how to handle alien blades, and in return, he taught her to grow crops. At first she called it pointless work, but when the first green sprouts pushed through the soil, she stared in quiet wonder. "It listens," she said. "It grows because we care." Lyra became fascinated by human stories. She spent nights by the fire asking questions about Earth, about oceans, about cities that touched the clouds. "Did people really walk together without fear?" she asked. "Yes," Daniel said. "And sometimes they argued, sometimes they failed. But they always tried again." Lyra smiled. "Then maybe we are learning to be human too." And Illyra, gentle, curious Illyra, spent hours watching the stars. She often stood at the edge of the valley, whispering the names Daniel had taught her. "Sirius, Vega, Sol," she would murmur. "They all look like home, even if I've never been there." Daniel often joined her. "Home isn't a place," he said. "It's the people you choose to keep close." Her gaze lingered on him. "Then maybe I've already found mine." Life on the moon was not easy. The nights were cold and the food scarce. But they learned together. They built a small greenhouse, gathered rainwater, and repaired the ship piece by piece. For the first time, the princesses knew what it meant to work with their hands, to build something that wasn't ordered but earned. One morning, Daniel awoke to laughter. The three sisters were running through the field, chasing a group of small glowing creatures that darted like living lanterns. Their laughter echoed through the valley, and Daniel stood watching, smiling. He had never seen them so alive. But peace never lasts forever. That evening, Lyra picked up a weak signal on the ship's old comms unit, a broadcast repeating the same message in different languages. "Attention all systems under the Velthar Empire. The Emperor's daughters have betrayed their blood. A bounty is placed upon the human who corrupted them, alive or dead." Sarath clenched her fists. "He's hunting us." Daniel stayed calm. "Then we stay hidden." "We've done it before." Illyra looked at him with worry. "He'll never stop, will he?" Daniel shook his head. "No, but he can't reach what he doesn't understand." That night, as they sat by the fire, Daniel told them stories of human survivors who rebuilt after Earth's fall. Stories of small groups who hid, who loved, who endured until the stars themselves seemed to protect them. Illyra listened closely, her head resting against his shoulder. "Then maybe we can endure too," she whispered. Daniel looked at the sky, the endless galaxy stretching above them. "We will," he said quietly, "because you've already become what he feared most, alive, free, and unbroken." The fire crackled, the wind whispered through the alien grass, and somewhere far away, imperial ships searched the stars. But here on this hidden world, 4 hearts burned brighter than any empire's power could ever extinguish. The lesson Daniel had started in a cold palace had finally found its true classroom, the open sky. The wind howled across the valley as night fell, carrying the soft hum of the ship's old engines. The stars above the hidden moon glowed brighter than usual, as if warning of what was coming. Daniel stood outside their shelter, watching the sky. His instincts told him something had changed. He had lived long enough to recognize silence before the storm. Inside, the sisters laughed quietly around the fire. Lyra was trying to cook a strange blue fruit that Daniel had found earlier, and Sarath kept teasing her for burning it. Elira sat nearby, weaving strands of glowing grass into a small blanket. It was the kind of peace Daniel had once thought impossible for them, but that peace shattered a moment later. The ship's old alarm beeped weakly. Lyra rushed to check the console, her face draining of color. "Signal detected," she whispered. "Multiple ships. Imperial code." Sarath was already on her feet, her hand going to her weapon. "How far?" "Entering orbit now," Lyra said, her voice trembling. "They found us." Daniel felt the air tighten around them. "We knew this day would come," he said. "But we'll face it together." The sisters didn't argue. They had long stopped being students. They were survivors now. Within the hour, the black shapes of Imperial cruisers filled the sky. Columns of light streaked down from orbit, striking the valley floor. The ground shook under the weight of landing craft. Daniel looked up and saw the insignia of the Velthar Empire shining on their hulls, his past and their pain returning all at once. Sarath's voice was steady. "We can't fight them head-on. There are too many." Lyra's eyes flickered with defiance. "Then we outthink them," Daniel nodded. "You know this world better than they do." "Use that." They moved quickly, spreading through the valley. The old tunnels beneath the rocks became traps and hiding spots. Lyra set up jammers to scramble the enemy's sensors, while Sarath led a small team of local creatures Daniel had befriended, glowing, loyal beasts that followed her commands. Lyra stayed by Daniel's side. She carried her mother's pendant close to her heart.
"Do you think he came himself?"
she asked softly. Daniel hesitated. If he did, it's because he can't let go of what he lost. The first wave of soldiers arrived, black-armored Veltharian troops sweeping through the fields with blasters raised. Daniel and Elira hid behind a rock ridge, watching as the soldiers searched their camp. The fire pit was cold, the footprints scattered. "They were here," one soldier said. "Find them!" Sarath struck from above, leaping from the ridge like a shadow. Her blade moved faster than sight, silent and precise. 2 soldiers fell before they even called for help. Lyra's trap triggered next, a pulse bomb that released a bright flash, knocking out their visors. Daniel pulled Elira back into the cave network as explosions lit the valley. Smoke and light painted the night in chaos. Through the noise, the Emperor's voice came again, this time real, transmitted through a massive projection that towered above the battlefield. His face, cold and regal, stared down at the burning valley. "My daughters," his voice thundered, "you have turned my name into disgrace. You will return to me now, or I will turn this moon to ash." Elira looked up at the sky, tears in her eyes. "He doesn't even see us as people," she whispered. Daniel put a hand on her shoulder. "Then show him what people can do." They regrouped near the base of an old mountain where their ship was hidden. Sarath had wounds on her arms, but her eyes burned with determination. "They won't stop. We need to end this tonight." Lyra pointed toward the orbiting fleet visible between clouds. "If we overload the ship's reactor and link it to the moon's energy field, we can send out a pulse that fries their systems. It'll disable them long enough for us to escape." Daniel frowned. "That could destroy everything within miles, including us." Sarath met his eyes. "Better to die free than live as slaves again." Elira stepped forward. "No, there's another way." She looked at the pendant in her hands. "The crystal in this pendant, it's from the Emperor's energy core. It can control their ship's network. If I can connect it, maybe I can shut them down." Lyra blinked. "That's insane. You could burn yourself alive trying." Elira smiled softly. "Maybe. But someone has to try." Before anyone could stop her, she ran toward the communication tower they had built near the ridge. The sky above flashed with more dropships. Daniel shouted after her, but the noise drowned his voice. He followed, sprinting through smoke and light, his heart hammering. He reached her just as she placed the pendant into the control port. Energy surged through the tower, lighting up the entire valley with blue fire. The ships above flickered one by one, their engines dying in the air. The soldiers stopped moving, their armor frozen mid-command. Elira screamed as light poured from her hands, but Daniel caught her, pulling her away from the burning console. The glow faded. Silence fell. Above them, the Imperial fleet drifted powerless, caught in the gravity of the moon. The Emperor watched from his command ship, speechless. For the first time in his rule, he had no control. Daniel held Elira close. Her body trembled, her eyes half open. "It's done," she whispered. "He can't reach us now." He looked at her, his voice breaking. "You did it. You showed him." In that quiet moment, under the pale alien sky, the daughters of the Velthar Empire proved that strength was not born from fear or blood. It was born from love, and from the courage to stand against the chains of power. The Empire had come to reclaim them. Instead, it found a new beginning. The battle was over. The sky above the hidden moon had turned quiet again, filled only with drifting wreckage and the faint shimmer of starlight. The once mighty Imperial fleet hung broken in orbit, its power silenced by one act of courage. Daniel sat near the valley's ridge, holding Elira in his arms. Her breathing was weak but steady. The glow from her pendant had dimmed, its power spent. The blue grass around them waved softly in the cool wind, as if the world itself was sighing in relief. Lyra and Sarath arrived moments later, their faces streaked with soot, but their eyes alive. "The ships are gone," Sarath said, looking at the horizon. "Their systems are dead. The Emperor's command ships are adrift. He can't reach us now." Daniel nodded slowly. "She did it." Lyra knelt beside Elira, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. "She saved us all." Elira opened her eyes weakly. "I didn't save anyone," she whispered. "I only reminded them what it means to feel." Sarath looked toward the sky. "Father won't stop. He'll rebuild, come again." Daniel shook his head. "Not the same way. This will change everything. Even he can't fight what's already begun." Days passed. The moon returned to peace. The sisters rebuilt their small home, tending to the fields that had survived the battle. Daniel watched them heal, not just from wounds, but from the weight of years spent under their father's control. Elira grew stronger each day, though her once glowing eyes now carried a quiet calm. Lyra spent her time studying the remains of the Imperial tech, using it to repair the communication tower. Sarath trained in the valley, no longer a soldier of conquest but a protector of their new world. One evening, Lyra called Daniel to the tower. "You should see this," she said. The hollow screen flickered, showing a broadcast spreading across the Imperial channels. The Emperor himself appeared, his robe torn, his face shadowed by defeat. Behind him, the throne room stood empty. His voice was slower than before. "The daughters of Velthar have chosen exile. The human who led them has been declared beyond judgment. Let no one pursue them. Let them fade into the stars." He stopped, staring at something off-screen, then continued. "They call him a corruptor. I call him something else, a reminder that even an empire can bleed." The message ended. Silence filled the air. Sarath leaned against the console, stunned. "He spared us?" Daniel exhaled slowly. "No, he surrendered." That night, the stars shone brighter than ever. The four of them sat by the fire one last time. The flames danced softly, reflecting in their eyes. Elira looked up at the sky. "What happens now?" Daniel smiled. "Now you live. You make your own world. A new kind of empire, one that doesn't need crowns or armies." Lyra tilted her head. "And you? Will you stay?" Daniel hesitated. "For a while, but maybe my place is out there again, teaching others what we built here." Elira's voice was quiet. "You've already taught us everything." Daniel shook his head gently. "No, you learned it yourselves. That's what makes it real." The fire crackled. Sarath looked at her sisters, her eyes softening. "He's right. We don't need to return to what we were. We can build something new, something worthy of the galaxy's future." Lyra smiled faintly. "A world where no one's heart belongs to a throne." The night passed in silence. When the first light of dawn touched the valley, Daniel walked to the old ship. Its engines, long silent, hummed faintly again. He turned as Elira approached. She stood close, the pendant glowing faintly once more. "Wherever you go," she said, "take this. It belongs to both our worlds now." Daniel took it, his eyes meeting hers. "Then it will remind me that even in the darkest empire, light can grow." She smiled, her voice trembling. "Goodbye, Daniel." He stepped into the ship, the door closing behind him with a quiet hiss. The engines roared softly, lifting him toward the stars. The sisters stood together, watching the silver trail fade into the dawn. As the ship disappeared beyond the horizon, Elira whispered, He didn't just teach us to be human. He taught us to be alive. Years later, travelers would speak of a small moon hidden on the edge of known space, a place where humans and aliens lived as equals. Guided by the descendants of 3 royal sisters who once defied an empire, they called it the Haven of Velthar, a world born from rebellion, rebuilt by love, and far across the stars wherever Daniel went. People told stories of him, the human teacher who changed an empire not with weapons or power, but with compassion. Because in the end, the greatest lesson he ever taught was simple, that even in a universe ruled by fear, humanity could still light the way.